Hello.
Hello, everyone. Okay, looks like some folks are starting to join us here. Welcome to the Creative Saskatchewan Grants for Music session. We're excited to talk all about the grant world today. I'm Brittany McFarland. I'm the Program and Education Manager at SAS Music. So we work a lot with Creative Saskatchewan. We're very familiar with their grants, what's available to our members and the music community in the province. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm joining you from Treaty 4 territory in the same building as Lisa, just on a different floor today. We're very grateful to have you here with us today. SAS Music, we're all about providing support and assistance to the music industry in the province. One of the hugest benefits of being a SAS Music member is being able to access our consult programs, which includes grant reviews. So, if you've ever thought about applying for funding with Creative Saskatchewan, or if you're new, or if say you've been rejected in the past, you can book an appointment with either one of our staff members or one of the mentors that we work with to kind of talk you through the granting process, the applications, marketing plans. We can do bio reviews. And then prior to submitting your application to them, we can actually do a full review and kind of work with you. We won't write it for you, but we'll give you that useful feedback that you can kind of take, tweak your application that way. Yeah, it's such a benefit to being a SAS Music member. It's one of our highly accessed programs. We've got a ton of super knowledgeable staff here who are here to help you in that department. So today we're joined by Lisa from Creative Saskatchewan. I will hand it over to her right away here. We've got a great presentation. I'll ask that folks use the Q&A function. If you have any questions that come up over the course of this presentation, please put them in the Q&A box and we'll save those until the end. So even if you ask it early on in the presentation, we will get to you eventually. Don't think that we've forgotten or are ignoring you. We'll save those questions to the end. And I think that's kind of all the housekeeping rules. This is being recorded. So if you need to sneak out early, or if you have anyone who wants to learn more about the Creative Saskatchewan grants for musicians, we'd be happy to share this recording following the session. So I think with that, Lisa, I'll hand it over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Brittany. So yes, I am Lisa Prpich, and I am a program officer at Creative Saskatchewan. And I would like to welcome you to this workshop about the grants that we offer musicians. Creative Saskatchewan supports creative entrepreneurs throughout the entire province of Saskatchewan in treaties 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 10, which encompasses the unceded territories of the Naheawak, Anishinaabe, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Dene nations, as well as the homeland of the Métis Nation. I'm so pleased that you've all joined me today. For those of you who have not yet accessed support from Creative Saskatchewan, I hope you learned today what you need to get the confidence in order to apply. And for those of you who have received funding through our grant programs, I hope you learned something valuable. Today, I'm going to go over all of the programs that we offer, the guidelines, the assessment criteria, and help you determine which projects are right for you. So in a nutshell, Creative Saskatchewan supports the creative industries and entrepreneurs with our investment fund program. Through the production of commercially viable creative products, market access and export development initiatives like touring, music showcasing, market presence endeavors, marketing and promotional activities, growth and innovation through research and development and market intelligence initiatives, as well as projects that enhance workforce development, business and export readiness, and entrepreneurial skill development. So in a nutshell, that's what we do. The investment fund programs are available to commercially viable creative industry projects and endeavors in the following sectors. So music, which is supported by SAS Music, film and television, supported by the Saskatchewan Media Production Industry Association, live performing arts, supported by the Saskatchewan Association of Theatre Professionals, interactive digital media, supported by Sask Interactive, craft and visual art, supported by Saskatchewan Craft Council, as well as Sask Galleries, and book publishing supported by SAS Books. Together with these 7 industry associations, we amplify their members' business skills, helping them to build extraordinary careers. There are a number of funding agencies in the province and in the country. The key to Creative Saskatchewan grant programs is that the project being applied for demonstrates market potential, viability, and demand, as well as demonstrate economic benefit to the province of Saskatchewan. We offer many grants. So how do you know what to apply for and when? Because some of our grants are available to musicians only. Some are available to all creative sectors. Some are deadlined, meaning you can apply anytime from when the program opens to when it closes. Some grant programs are a continual intake, meaning it's open until the funding is exhausted and there isn't a defined deadline. And some of our programs are juried and some are assessed internally. So where do you start? Well, I'll go through right now all of the grants that we offer for music. So we'll start with the sound recording grant, which is deadlined. There is one deadline a year, and that deadline is coming up December 14th. It's a jury program open to music only. So it's open now. Anyone can go ahead and submit their application to the sound recording grant. After the deadline of December 14th, all eligible applications received at that point will then go to jury, and about 8 to 10 weeks after December 14th is when everyone will receive their results. The market travel grant, it's a continuous intake, meaning it's just open, and it will remain open until funding is exhausted. It will be cut off sometime before our fiscal year end of March 31st. Applications to market travel are assessed internally against the grant criteria. The business capacity and research grants, those 2 grants are deadlined. There's one deadline, and that is coming up January 11th. That's a jury program open to all creative sectors. The market and export development grant, there's 2 streams. The major stream is deadlined. There is one deadline, and that is coming up January 11th, and it's a juried program open to all creative sectors. The micro stream of the market and export development grant is deadlined. There's 4 deadlines a year. The first one's coming up July 7th, then September 15th, December 1st, and February 9th. The micro stream is open to all creative sectors, and it's assessed both internally by Creative Saskatchewan and industry experts against the criteria. And the tour support deadline grant is also deadlined, 4 deadlines a year. June 1st was the first deadline. Next one is August 10th, then October 12th, then February 1st. The music stream for the tour support grant is what we're going to be talking about today. And that program is open to, that grant program is assessed by industry experts against the criteria. So when a grant program opens, which by the way, they're all open to music right now, they usually open in the spring after the new fiscal year. So when it's open, you can apply at any time, just as long as you have all the information you need in order to put your application together. But you just have to remember that you can only apply for future activity. You can apply for stuff that's already happened. Once you submit your application, then you can undertake the project and start incurring expenses. As far as program opening and deadline dates and all program news, we suggest you subscribe to Spotlight, which is the Creative Saskatchewan newsletter. It is the quickest and easiest way to find out all about opening and deadline information and all that good stuff. And you can sign up by visiting our website. When it comes to grants, it's all about timing. And just because there is a deadline, we don't recommend necessarily that you wait until the last minute to apply. A deadline just means that applications must be submitted before the deadline. But generally programs are open for weeks or months. So when a program is open and you have all the information in order to apply, then you should apply. Make sure you give yourself plenty of time, ensure your application is thorough and complete, and then hit the submit button. Too often we've seen people wait until the last minute only to miss the deadline or have their application be deemed ineligible because it was received late or incomplete. When the clock strikes 4 p.m., that is it. We have no way of adjusting the online system to accept applications submitted 1 second late. And it is crazy how many deadlines this happens. So just don't wait, give yourself lots of time and really try and apply as early as you can if that's possible. One thing to keep in mind, I think that's fairly important, is that Creative Saskatchewan does have grant programs that cover a wide range of career levels. So whether you're just getting your start in the music industry, whether you're considered an intermediate artist, or whether you're well established to, is receiving Radio Star Maker funding, there's really something for everyone. And I think the key to that is the impact of your activity, meaning that the activity you're undertaking will garner the results you are after, and that the risk is worth the reward, and that what you're going to undertake is the next logical step in your career. Your grant, your activity, it may not make money. You might lose money. I mean, there needs to be commercial intent, but going on your tour or recording your album may cost more than what you expect to make. But if it's the next logical step in your career, it makes sense to do that. And an example I like to use is a band going on their first European tour. It's going to be really expensive, and the chances of you making money are pretty slim. But if going to Europe and capturing that market is the next market on your list, and it makes sense for you to do there, to go there, then then it's a good thing to undertake. So just keep in mind that the impact is there. As far as grants open to musicians, I ran through all of the deadlines and whatnot, but a good way to kind of look at it is grants that we offer musicians would be production, such as sound recording and tour support, business expansion, like business capacity and research grants, and marketing, which are captured by both the micro and major streams of the Market and Export Development Grant, as well as the Market Travel Grant. Now for the production, so sound recording and tour support, this is your bread and butter. This is how you're going to make your money, and this is the foundation of your career in music. And it all starts with the recording. So we'll start off by diving into the sound recording grant, which supports the production of commercially viable sound recordings for promotional use and or commercial release, meaning you will be using the recording to market your brand and sell your music to fans. There's one deadline a year coming up December 14th. In past years, we've had 2 deadlines. This year, there's just one. Applications are assessed by a jury, and the sound recording grant features fast tracking. So fast tracking means that if you are applying for EP or LP, and you have already secured funding from Factor or Music Action, your application to us will be fast tracked, meaning that it is going to bypass the jury process. Fast tracked applications can be submitted at any time when the grant program is open. They'll be funded in the order in which they're received as the availability of funds allow. Applications that don't qualify for fast tracked approval will be assessed as normal by a jury process after the deadline. There's 3 streams for the sound recording grant. The first is the single, which means that you're going to be undertaking the production of 1 to 3 professionally recorded songs that will be released commercially. Applicants are eligible to receive a maximum of 50% of eligible expenses, up to $1,500 per project. For EP, It is for the production of an EP recording. Now, various people and organizations have different definitions of what an EP is. To us, an EP is a recording of between 4 and 6 songs, no more than 30 minutes of total running time. If it's more than 30 minutes of total running time, it becomes an LP. So just make sure that the project you're undertaking, you're applying to the right stream, EP or LP. EP recording must be intended for commercial release. You can get up to 50% of eligible expenses, no more than $10,000. An LP is for a full length, at least 6 songs of recorded material, more than 30 minutes of total running time. It must be intended for commercial release. You can get 50% of eligible expenses up to $15,000. So just kind of in a nutshell, this is the difference between an EP and an LP. And single is 1 to 3 songs, EP 4 to 6, less than 30 minutes in total running time. LP is at least 6 songs, more than 30 minutes of total running time. So what kind of expenses can you apply for? What does the sound recording grant cover? Well, it includes the production expenses directly related to the project and incurred during the project term. So again, anything you've already done isn't eligible, but stuff that you're going to be undertaking, you can include in the grant. Expenses related to the recording and mixing process, those are eligible, but they have to be done at Saskatchewan facilities by Saskatchewan residents. If you are going to be recording and mixing out of province, well, that's fine. You just don't put those expenses in this budget. If you are looking at working with a non-Saskatchewan producer, but recording in the province, the travel costs for the non-Saskatchewan producer are eligible when you bring them into the province, just as long as the recording happens at a Saskatchewan facility and the staff working in the studio are Saskatchewan residents. Musician fees are eligible for both stakeholders and hired musicians based on industry standard rates. And by stakeholders, we mean those are band members who are either financially responsible for the band or are rewarded financially from the band. So these aren't people that you hire, these are the core band members, that would be stakeholders. So musician fees for them, as well as hired musicians. You are going to want to use industry standard rates. If you're going to pay people more, well, you can do that, just justify within the application. See, members of the union can use union rates, of course. Professional studio rates that you're paying someone up to $90 an hour, and expenses related to the mastering of the recording, both in Saskatchewan and out of province, those are eligible expenses. Manufacturing expenses for both promotional and sales purposes, those expenses can be incurred in Saskatchewan and out of province. It's a good idea to justify the number of units that you're manufacturing and the format of that you're manufacturing on. Like, how are you going to move those units, and why does it make sense for you and your audience? Some bands can sell cassettes, and it makes total sense for them to manufacture their recording on cassette. Other bands, not so much. So how many units you're manufacturing and on what kind of format, that's really important to kind of break that out and talk about how you're going to move that. Other eligible expenses, album artwork, such as hiring a graphic designer and a photographer. And in the sound recording grant, you can include marketing expenses directly related to marketing your album. And those expenses can be 10% of the total project budget. Ineligible expenses. So out of province expenses for recording or mixing, that can happen. Projects that don't have commercial intent as their primary purpose and focus are ineligible. Podcasts, mileage and per diem rates for applicants and hired musicians, home studio costs where the studio is owned by the applicant, which exceed 20% of the total budget or $50 an hour. And all of this is laid out within the sound recording grant guidelines, but we also encourage you to see the general guidelines because that lists all of the ineligible and eligible expenses. So if you are recording out of province, you can still apply to the sound recording grant for the expenses that are eligible. You just want to make sure there's no ineligible out of province expenses in your budget. And you want to include information about the production in your application just to kind of give the jury a sense of like, what are you doing? So what's the, a description of the recording, who's the team, and when and where are you doing the out of province recording? Okay, so that's the sound recording grant. Once you have it all wrapped up and you have your manufactured units, you're going to need to get it out there. And of course, the best way to do that is to tour it. It's different for everyone, but generally the biggest part of the revenue pie for a musician is performing. So let's dive into the tour support grant, which supports commercially viable touring opportunities for eligible Saskatchewan musicians touring in Canada and abroad. And just remember that tours must be in support of a new release. So there's two streams, one for live performing arts, meaning theater. The other stream is for music. So these are the requirements. You need to have at least 6 shows confirmed at the time of application. And those shows must be for some type of a contracted performance fee. You don't need to have signed contracts at the time of application. I mean, some people book their tours over the phone and it's just a verbal agreement, and that's fine, but they have to be 6 confirmed shows for some type of fee, meaning like a percentage of ticket sales or like what a door deal, like whatever that happens to be. You can't have more than 5 consecutive days off between performances. But if you're traveling across the world in between shows and more time is needed, well, that makes sense. And your tours have to take place in more than one city and in different venues. You can do repeat performances in the same city at different venues, but you can't do, say, like, a run of shows at one particular venue and have all those shows count. Expenses that are eligible for tour support. Well, of course, it has to be directly related to the tour and incurred during the tour. Performance fees for non-band members and crew fees for techs and tour managers are eligible. Booking fees and management commissions are eligible. Tour manager fees. You can include in-house tour manager fees, meaning like someone in the band takes that on. You just need to justify the fee and the amount in the application. Phone expenses are eligible for tour support, 100% for pre-tour, to cover like booking of the shows and lining up media and all that kind of stuff. $200 for expenses while on the tour. Marketing expenses to market the tour, up to 25% of the project budget. Accommodations up to $300 a night. Per diems, accommodations, and travel expenses for Saskatchewan residents. For travel, performance, and promotional dates. If you have days off, that's fine. Just don't include expenses in the budget for that. Now, let's say that, your band, there's 5 people and 3 of them are Saskatchewan residents and 2 of them are not. Well, that's okay, but the non-Saskatchewan residents, you just don't include their expenses. You don't include their flights, their per diems, their hotel, anything like that, because travel is only eligible for Saskatchewan residents. Performance fees for band members are not eligible for tour support. If you need to hire, like say your drummer can't go on tour with you and you need to hire a drummer, that's fine. You can pay that drummer performance fees. You just don't pay your own band members performance fees. Projects that don't have commercial intent, meaning you're playing for free, those aren't eligible. Showcase performances cannot be included as a confirmed showcase, a confirmed show date. So let's say that you have a showcase at Reeperbahn. And so you decide, well, you're going to tour Europe while you're over there because it makes sense. That's great. Book your shows around Reeperbahn, but your Reeperbahn showcase is not a confirmed showcase, or not a confirmed show date for tour support. Residencies are ineligible, as well as expenses for non-travel and non-working days. A tour support grant supports up to 50% of eligible expenses, no more than $15,000. Folks can receive 2 tour grants a year, and there's 4 deadlines. First one recently happened, next one is August 10th, then October 12th, then February 1st. All applications are assessed internally and by a jury, and as well, tour support, like sound recording, features fast tracking. So if you have secured funding for your tour from Factor Music Action, you can bypass the jury system, submit your application when the grant is open, and as long as funding is available, your application would be approved. Okay, so that's tour support. Now we're going to shift focus here and look at business expansion. So if you are currently or expecting to someday make a living as a musician, well, you are a business, and you can look at a business expansion grant such as business capacity or research. So business capacity supports projects that focus on developing business knowledge and improved efficiencies, as well as expanded workforce capacity and business skills, which result in growth, market expansion, and improved profitability. The research grant supports projects that focus on market research and market intelligence, identifying commercial opportunities and/or emerging technologies. So all that is very wordy, I know that, but how does the business capacity grant support musicians? Well, here's a couple of examples. You could attend the CMI and Music Coalition Music's Artist Entrepreneurial Program, which some folks have through support from Creative Saskatchewan's business capacity grant. Also purchasing software and educational tools that enhance business skills like bookkeeping, product sales, that kind of thing. Attending workshops or seminars or training programs that improve business skills of yourself, your management team, those are eligible. Learning opportunities include mentorships, work teams, or internships that support industry capacity and job growth in the province, and workforce readiness through skill and business expertise development specific to an industry. Just note though, projects have to be focused on business skill development. That's the key. Technical skill development, like, learning to play guitar better, or, making jewelry, that's not eligible. It's about business skill development. The focus of the research grant is to uncover new market opportunities, whether it be a new geographical focus or a new demographic opportunity, and it upgrades your business practices to best practices. And the objective of the research grant is to expand your business. Both the business capacity and research grants, it's 50% of eligible expenses up to $25,000 per year. There's one deadline, which is coming up January 11th, and applications to both business capacity and research are assessed by a jury. Okay, so that's the business skill development. Let's focus now on marketing. So you have a new album through the sound recording grant, and you have a tour coming up thanks to the tour support grant. and you're a better business person as a result of the business capacity and research grants. So now you have to focus on marketing. And you would do that through the Market and Export Development Grant. Like I said earlier, there's two streams. The micro stream is efficient and timely access to marketing support for small, but sharply focused and effective marketing projects, like the production of music and promotional videos, print and online advertising campaigns, updating your website and your marketing assets, hiring a marketing or social media expert, working with a publicist, the production and marketing of live stream performances. Those are all examples of what you can do with a micro stream grant. You can receive 50% of eligible expenses up to $5,000. And there are 4 deadlines a year. So it's open. When it's open, you can apply. And after the deadline, those applications received up to that point then go to jury. So July 7th is the first deadline of the year, then September 15th, December 1st, and February 9th. And don't worry, all this information is on the website. Applications to the microstream are assessed both internally and by industry experts against the assessment criteria. Now, the major stream that supports larger scale marketing opportunities, much like micro activity like hiring a publicist or a marketing professional, creating marketing and branding materials, website design, production of music and promotional videos, social media and advertising campaigns, travel expenses for marketing activities like, say, doing a radio tour, production of and marketing of live stream performances. So what can you apply for with the Market and Export Development Grant? Well, as long as your project has commercial intent as your primary purpose and it demonstrates market potential, viability, and demand. Travel expenses are eligible, like per diems and accommodations for Saskatchewan residents, expenses related to promotional video production. Now, say if you are doing a video outside of Saskatchewan, that's fine, that's eligible. You just need to provide a rationale in your application as to why it has to be done out of province. It's, encouraged that activity happens in Saskatchewan, but sometimes it's just like, let's say if you are doing a music video about, I don't know, like something geographically like Vegas. Well, it probably makes more sense just to go to Vegas and do your video than try and create Vegas in Saskatchewan. Accommodations are eligible in market travel when, say, if you're like doing a radio tour or something. Yeah, so in essence, those are the eligible expenses. As far as what is not eligible with Market and Export Development, no, you can't apply to both streams. So you can apply to both major and micro for the same project. You would pick whichever one is more fitting. Applications cannot be submitted by a service provider, meaning individuals or businesses creating marketing materials for the artists. It needs to be the artist who applies to Creative Saskatchewan. You cannot apply to attend an event where the primary organizer is a Creative Saskatchewan Industry Association. Applications for motivational and speaking tools and tours aren't eligible for marketing. Travel expenses for non-Saskatchewan residents, expenses for non-travel and non-working days, and in-house fees related to social media are not eligible for support through the micro stream. So, you can't pay yourself to administer a social media campaign. You need to hire someone to do that. It needs to be not in-house. Major stream supports 50% of eligible expenses up to $25,000 a year or $50,000 over a 2-year period. There's one deadline for the major stream, which is coming up January 11th, and applications are assessed by a jury. The music video production grant. So last year was the very first year of the music video production grant. It's not open yet, so stay tuned for details. The program is for emerging Saskatchewan filmmakers to produce a music video for Saskatchewan musicians who have an upcoming single to promote. So if you are looking to do a music video and you want something quick and guaranteed, it's better to look at the Market and Export Development Grant right now. Music video production is still supported by the Market and Export Development Grant. Some videos will be eligible for both market and export development and music video production. So it would be up to the applicant to decide which is the best that they which is the best fit and what they want to apply for. But in other cases, eligibility requirements will determine which one you can apply to. So like I said, if you're wanting to do a music video ASAP, it's best to apply to the Market and Export Development Grant right now, as the music video production is not open yet. Okay, so you have some good buzz going on because you've undertaken all of this marketing activity and you have your new album out and you're touring. And let's say you've gotten into a showcase. You've applied to a major showcase like, say, South by Southwest in Austin. That's great. Well, how do you get there? Well, you look at the Market Travel Grant, which provides support to individuals and businesses to attend markets and events. So if you have a showcase invitation, which means you've applied to this showcase and a jury has selected you and you receive an official invitation to showcase at this event, that means you have a showcase invitation, and that means you're eligible to apply to Market Travel and perform at this event, which is targeted to industry, and that is the key. The event has to be primarily focused on industry as opposed to a public event. The grant is intended to help get you and your people to an event to showcase. And yeah, like I said, it needs to have commercial intent, demonstrate market potential, viability, and demand, and the focus needs to be on industry. As far as eligible expenses, travel for hired Saskatchewan support musicians and technicians. Expenses have to be directly related to the project and incurred during the timeline of the travel and attending the event. You can purchase your airfare and event registration prior to applying to Creative Saskatchewan. But as far as undertaking expenses, those need to happen after the date of application. You can include marketing expenses directly related to marketing your showcase, up to 10% of the budget. And publicist fees are eligible, but they would be included in that 10% marketing cap. You can include mileage and per diem amounts for your travel with Market Travel, fees for hired performers and support personnel engaged solely for the purposes of the project. Phone expenses are eligible 50% when out of the country, accommodations up to $300 a night. Ineligible expenses, events in Saskatchewan aren't supported. Attending a conference, that would fall under the business capacity grant. Management fees ineligible. Festivals where industry is not the primary target, that would not fall under Market Travel. Speaking engagements, touring expenses, you would apply to the tour support grant program. In-house marketing, meaning stuff you're doing yourself. Any marketing that's captured in other Creative Saskatchewan grant programs, that you would not include in your Market Travel. Of course, travel expenses for non-Saskatchewan residents and expenses for non-travel or non-work days would not be eligible. With the Market Travel grant, you can get up to 50% of eligible expenses to a maximum of $5,000. There's no deadline for the grant, meaning it's open and it just stays open until funding is exhausted. There's no deadline or cutoff, but it would be closed before the fiscal year end, which is March 31st. And applications to Market Travel are assessed internally against the assessment criteria. So, in a nutshell, those are all of the Creative Saskatchewan grants that we offer musicians. So if you feel like you are ready to apply, what do you do? Well, I suggest reading both the general and specific grant guidelines, which can be found on the website. What you'll want to do is under the investment program tab, right at the header, you select what program that you want to look at. Like say, for instance, market and export development. You select that, and then on the grant webpage for market and export development, you scroll down and you find all the information you need to know about that grant. That's where you'll see the official grant guidelines, both the general and the specific. And I know this sounds very boring, but it's really, really important to read to make sure that you're on the right track and that you're not going to waste your time in applying for something that you're not eligible for, or that the, some of the expenses you're including are not eligible. Next, you want to read the assessment criteria for the grant you're applying for. Each grant program has a different criteria, but these are exactly the questions that you're going to be asked in the application, and how the application will be scored by the jurors or assessed internally. So on the grant webpage, you want to scroll down to assessment criteria and then check it out. So this is the assessment criteria for the major stream of the market and export development grant. I won't go through the assessment criteria for all the music grant programs, but this is just a good example. So this is what you're going to expect. These are the questions you're going to have to answer when you get into our online grant management system, which I'll talk about in a bit. So first question, description of the products being marketed. Next question, why is this the right time to market this product? Describe why you're undertaking this project, why it's the next logical step for your career, your business, and what your current market reach is. So that's 10 points. Next is your marketing strategy. Provide a detailed description of the demographic and location of your demonstrated market reach and target market. List the tools and strategies you'll use to promote the products being applied for, and describe the team you put together to implement this marketing strategy. It needs to be more specific than a general marketing plan and include details of how this project will allow you to grow your market and how you plan to reach them. Okay, so that is 20 points. Next, the team. Describe the experience and achievements of you and your team members. Why have you assembled this team? Remember to include industry relevant resumes or bios for the team members in the upload file tab. Now, you may be hiring a bunch of people. You may be hiring like a publicist and a radio tracker and a social media expert and a photographer. All these people, that would be your team. If you have a manager or a booking agent, they're on your team. But what if you're more do-it-yourself? What if it's like you and your bandmates doing a lot of this work yourselves? Well, that's your team, but you need to explain what those roles will be. Okay, timeline. What is the start date of your project, of your budgeted activities, and your end date? So once you're done your budget, excuse me, once you're done your budget, you want to pick target start and end dates for all the activities, and that's going to inform your timeline. This is the general timeline for releasing your album and all of the singles and the videos and whatnot. This is the timeline for your project you're applying to Creative Saskatchewan for. Next question, what is your expected return on investment? So what are the benefits to doing this? It might not be bags and bags of money, but it could be things like expanded market reach, increased sales or distribution channels, revenue diversification, meaning finding new ways to make money, social media traction, reviews, events, that kind of thing. So this is really linked to your goals. Next, budget and financing. Okay, so how are you going to pay for this? Creative Saskatchewan is 50% up to the maximum. Where's the other money coming from? If you have confirmed third-party financing, meaning you have let's say you got a grant from Factor, and money, you're bringing money into the province for that, then you would get additional points based on that. Okay, so that's the assessment criteria. So you want to read that in advance, and that just gives you a sense, okay, these are the pieces of the puzzle I'm going to need to put together when I apply. Now, in order to apply, you need to have a profile on GMS, which is our online grant management system. So on the web page, you would, like, let's say you're looking at the Market and Expert Development Grant and you click apply, it then takes you to the GMS webpage. And this explains what GMS is, how it all works. And don't worry, we do have staff on hand to answer your questions and help you get things set up. So once you have a sense of, what grant you're going to apply for and what you need to do in order to submit, you want to make sure that your application is being submitted while the grant is open, and that, of course, you haven't incurred any of the expenses yet. Once you're in GMS, and you set up your profile, and you would select the music sector as the sector that you identify with. Then the grants available to the music sector will appear for you in GMS, and there's going to be a folder in the kind of top right-hand corner that has the template forms you are going to need. Each grant has different templates, the primary one being the budget. I highly recommend downloading these forms as soon as you can, because they will give you a strong sense of what the grant supports, all the different activities. Now, we talk about that in the guidelines and whatnot, but when you look at the budget template, which is Excel, and it lists everything, it gives you a good sense of what type of activity that grant supports. You're also going to want to download the travel itinerary forms if you're doing market travel, tour support, or any grant that undertakes travel. And each travel itinerary is different depending on the grant for market travel, tour support, or general. So there's templates for consistent travelers and days, meaning it's the same group of people all traveling the same days together. But there's also a form for different people, different days, meaning, let's say you're a solo performer, and some people are traveling with you for these shows, and then different people for another shows, like however that's being laid out. If it's different people, different days, you would make sure to use the proper template. And also make sure you check out the travel policy document so that you're completing the itinerary correctly. Remember, travel for non-Saskatchewan residents aren't eligible. If you are not returning to Saskatchewan after the trip, well, how do you determine the amount of money that you would be eligible for? That is laid out there. Yeah, just all of the eligible and ineligible expenses for travel and how to use the correct amounts. That's all laid out in the travel policy document. Okay, so here is the templates and additional materials folder that I was speaking about in GMS. That's where you're going to find the travel itinerary and the budget templates. Once you click on that tab, and then you're going to click on the grant that you want, and in there you're going to find the proper templates. So I want to talk now a bit about the budget template, which is in Excel. Using the provided template is mandatory. You can't make up your own or use your own. You have to use the mandatory template. It will capture all the expenses that you'll be incurring, and it will give you a strong sense of what the grant supports. And I encourage you, when you open up the template, to read the instructions at the top, because it has some really key information. So things like HST and GST are ineligible expenses, and your budget amounts cannot include them. So if you're being quoted for something from a vendor and it includes GST or HST, you have to remove that amount before you put it into the budget template. All amounts have to be in Canadian dollars. So if you are doing stuff out of country, you need to convert it into Canadian dollars, and there's a link in the form and as well on the website in order to do that. You can use exchange rates provided by your bank or your credit card company, or the Bank of Canada rate. Yeah, so really important information in the budget template instructions that you should check out. So this is an example of the market and export development grant template. So you can see in the left column all of the typical eligible expenses. You might be incurring things, doing things that aren't in this template, and there's plenty of boxes with other. So this template is flexible, but it gives you a really strong sense of what market and export development typically captures: branding and artwork, photography, promotional merchandise, print advertising, posters, that kind of thing, music videos, hiring a publicist, radio promoter, marketing agency, doing advertising, web design, social media, attending different marketing events, shipping of your material, not distribution to fans and whatnot, but shipping items. So any expense that you're going to include, you want to put in the budget column. If the amount is in-house, meaning it's being incurred by you're paying yourself to do that. Maybe you're a photographer on the side and you're going to do your own photography work. You can pay yourself to do that, but that amount would also appear in the in-house column. And then amount being spent in Saskatchewan. If that money is being spent in the province, then that amount also goes in the Saskatchewan spend column. But everything in the budget column, and additionally in-house or amount spent in Saskatchewan, if appropriate. It's important to remember to complete the whole budget template. So at the top here, this is the calculations of the totals and whatnot. Then your project financing. This needs to equal 100%. So let's say your grand total is $10,000. 50% is $5,000. That's the amount you're requesting from Creative Saskatchewan. So you put Creative Saskatchewan pending $5,000. Then the other $5,000, well, where is that coming from? You're going to put that, is it band finances? Is it another funding agency? Is it confirmed crowdfunding? We'll get more into that. You would list confirmed or pending and the amount, but the total financing needs to equal the grand total, and it needs to equal 100%. Then you're going to talk about revenue projections. This is any money that you would make as a result of doing this project. So something like, sound recording, tour support, that's pretty easy. It's like, well, you're expecting to sell this many units or this many tickets. But by marketing, it's like, well, that's a little bit trickier. But what kinds of revenue opportunities are there? Would it be, things like royalties, merchandise sales, future album and ticket sales, that kind of thing. And you would provide low and high estimates. And then the investment summary. So this is basically like what it's costing versus the expected revenue and what the difference is. And it could be, you could be in the hole, you could be making, looking like you're going to make, lots of money on the project. Really, it's either way, it just, as long as it coincides with your goals and the impact. So how will you pay for it? So you're applying to Creative Saskatchewan for 50% of eligible expenses, up to the grant's maximum amount. The other 50% or the remaining amount could be a personal contribution. So this could be money that you already have. It could be like a line of credit or a credit card or whatever. but it's a personal contribution that you have secured and you're taking care of. It could be confirmed crowdfunding. If it's not confirmed crowdfunding, that's fine. But if your grant was approved, before we go to commitment, we would need to ensure that your crowdfunding is confirmed. And if it's not, then, are you putting in the money? Like, where's that coming from? You can include a third-party investment, meaning money from somebody else, like a label, a family member, an angel investor. It could be money from another funding agency, like Council Cultural France Saskatchewan, Western Economic Diversification Canada program, Factor, Music Action, Radio Star Maker Fund. Just remember that Creative Saskatchewan grants cannot be matched by funding from Sask Arts or Sask Culture. It is okay if you receive funding from them for other things, but you can't include funding from Sask Arts or Sask Culture in project financing structures for grants to Creative Saskatchewan. Okay, so you've done up your budget. I strongly encourage you to back up the budget to show how you arrived at the numbers in your budget. Are they guesses, or where did they come from? Estimates, quotes, invoices, there's a spot in the grant application on GMS for you to upload them. So businesses and individuals you're wanting to hire. So let's say you're hiring a producer or someone to master your album, or you're hiring a publicist, or you're hiring a graphic designer. Chances are they're going to send you an estimate or a quote or an invoice with the estimation of work. And that's the amount that you would use in your budget, remembering, of course, to remove GST or HST if they've included that. Or perhaps they've sent you an email, perhaps it's, you emailed your photographer friend and like, hey, are you available these dates? And they said, yep, that works great. It'll be $300. Okay, we'll take a screenshot of that email or save it as a PDF or whatever, and use that to back up that amount in your budget. Let's say that you're going to take out an ad in a magazine, like an online magazine, or, doing like some Facebook ads or whatever. You can use rate cards to back up your budget, or even just do like a breakdown, just written in, say, a Word doc and save it as a PDF, just kind of outlining, okay, this is my social media campaign. These are the platforms I'm using. This is how much I'm expecting to spend, for each of those. And just to kind of demonstrate how you're calculating the expenses that you're putting in your budget. And there are so many reasons to have a well-researched budget. It ensures that you're going to request an accurate amount of money from Creative Saskatchewan, because you don't want to sell yourself short. If you do end up going way over budget, Creative Saskatchewan can increase commitment after the fact. It also demonstrates that your plan is well thought out, and that goes a really long way with the jury, for them to know that it's like, okay, you've really put some thought into this, and how much this is going to cost you, who you're working with, when it's going to happen. And it just gives them that confidence. And it also gives you peace of mind knowing, that when you head out on the road or into the studio or whatever, that pretty accurately how much your project is going to cost. And that's really nice. Also super important are your timelines. So the activities in your budget and in your project plan, when will they happen? Jurors tend not to like timelines that are unrealistic and not well thought out. And if your grant is approved, it's how your final reporting date will be determined. So they're really important. They give you peace of mind, but also, really demonstrate that you've really thought about this. So you've put together your timeline and your budget and everything, but what if something unexpected happens that affects your project? Like, what if there's a global pandemic or a world shortage of vinyl, or both? Well, that's okay. We understand. We just ask that you do your best to determine reasonable start and end times for the activities you're applying for. If you're approved for the grant, the timeline will become part of your agreement with Creative Saskatchewan. But as you make your way through the project, you know, things change. You might need to push stuff back, revise timelines. Just keep us in the loop, and we'll do our best to allow for those changes and extend your final report due date for the grant. So it's not set in stone. You're not held to it. We just ask that you keep us in the loop. In your application, a really solid plan that connects all the dots is essential. So your plan for the project, your marketing strategy, your timeline, your travel itinerary if you're doing some travel, the team and your vendors, and a well-researched and backed up budget are so important. If they all connect and speak to one another, and it really gives a full sense of what it is you're doing. Another good idea is ask a colleague or a friend to look through your budget first. Like, give them your budget and say, okay, read this and then read my application. And if the two complement each other, great. But if it leaves your reader confused and with questions, then it's a good idea to go back and add some more detail and flesh things out. Another tip is a great way to get a sense of what Creative Saskatchewan grants can be used for and what's going on provincially in the music industry is to check out the grant recipient list. And there's a couple of ways to do that. So on the grant web page, so say you go to the Creative Saskatchewan website, you select investment grant programs, you select music, and then you select market and export grant. And you're looking at the micro stream. Right beside it on the grant webpage is recipients. And if you click on that link, then it will show you who's received grants that year. So it will have the applicant name, the sector, the amount of money, and what the project was. And this can be really interesting. It can show you like, oh, hey, I didn't realize, it's like it has all kinds of really interesting information and shows you what's going on out there. Also, you can check out the annual report. So on our website, if you select Discover from the top tab and then annual reports, there's reports for every year that Creative Saskatchewan has been in existence. You open the report and then skim through, and it includes a list of all the grant recipients for that particular year. It tells you who they are, the amount they got, and what it was for. So I don't know, it's kind of interesting. I encourage folks to check that out. Yeah, jury advice. So we asked industry experts that have been jurors for Creative Saskatchewan grant programs in the past. We asked them for advice to share with applicants, what they would like to encourage them to do, what they would tell them. So this is what they had to say. Write your entire application assuming that no one on the jury has ever heard of you before. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't, but to just assume that they haven't. Clearly communicate who you are, what you've accomplished, where you're going next, and how you plan to get there. Include overall goals that are reasonable, attainable, and possible, as well as demographics that you plan on targeting along with the release timeline. The jury wants to see a well thought out plan that demonstrates cohesion with where you are at in your career. You may be just starting out, or you've saturated your province and you want money for a tour of Western Canada. That's great. That makes sense. Be clear and be concise. If you're not a good writer, get a second set of eyes on it. Have a very clear image of what it is that you want to be funded for. Be able to describe it cleanly, briefly, and thoroughly. Have thought out the implications of the project, what else will be needed for it to be successful, and what realistically the outcomes will be, and how you will measure and record them. We hope to, it will be great to, don't equal confidence and decisiveness. Your wording is key. We will be doing X is a way to tell the jurors that, while funding would be a great addition to your plan, you'll be going ahead with it regardless. Start early, plan it out. Avoid rushing or being overly stressed during the process. Give yourself lots of time. If you need additional material from peers or colleagues, ask way in advance. Don't be repetitive. Show your passion for your art. Be professional, though it's okay to have fun and let your voice shine through. Make the jury want to get on side with your dreams, big or small. Be accurate, reasonable, and economical in your assessment of what things will cost. Do budget research and get the figures of what things actually cost. Don't ballpark or overestimate. So that's the jury advice that I wanted to share with you. And as you make your way through the process of reading through our grant guidelines, figuring out what programs are a good fit for you, setting things up for yourself on GMS, putting together your applications, as you make your way through and you have questions about the grant programs, we certainly encourage you to reach out to us, because that's what we are here for. On our web page is our contact us page, and it has all the ways for you to get in touch with us. And of course, sign up to the Creative Saskatchewan Spotlight, the newsletter. That is easy to do right on the website, tells you all the information that you're going to need to know. So yeah, basically, those are the Creative Saskatchewan grant programs open to the music sector. I will apologize for being long-winded, as I'm sure I was, but yeah. So if we have any questions, and it looks like we probably do.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you to Megan, who was on top of the links in the chat box. Super helpful to have those in real time. Yeah, you know, one thing that we always hear from when we're traveling to export events and stuff is how fortunate we are to have this provincial funding. You know, the US doesn't have things like this, so we're very grateful to Creative Sask and the funding that is available to the arts community here. So let's dive into these questions. The first one we're going to start with is specific to single recording. I have already had a song recorded but haven't yet received the bill. Is there a grant that I can apply for?
Well, because it's already happened, I would say no.
Okay, and that is the perfect segue into our next question. Just to clarify, if there's existing material for a project, can new material on the project be covered, or is the entire project not covered at that point?
Oh, okay. This is an excellent question. So yes, let's say you're kind of halfway through something. Future activity can be applied for. So let's say you've recorded a couple of songs or all your songs. Okay, that's okay. Let's leave those recording expenses out of the budget, so you wouldn't be paying like studio fees or producer or your musicians or anything. But it hasn't been mastered. It hasn't been manufactured. You haven't done album artwork. You haven't done marketing. So those activities you haven't done, they can be put into an application. You have to take maybe a little bit more time explaining. It's like, okay, you know, this has already happened, but this is coming up. This is what I want to do. Let's say you've undertaken a marketing campaign because for your new album, but you want to do a top up. You want to, you know, maybe do another video. You maybe want to, like, you know, do a few more, you know, ads, like social media stuff, whatever. Totally okay. You're going to want to talk about the stuff you've already undertaken, but say, okay, you know, I want to do a little bit more, and here's what I have planned. So yeah, previous expenses would be ineligible, but you know, same activity for future expenses, totally fine.
Perfect. What is required from Creative Saskatchewan as far as proof of residency?
Proof of residency, okay, and that is laid out in the official grant guidelines, and it has the definition for corporate or business as well as individual. So it's important to have a look at that. But you would basically need to be able to provide, what is it called? Your notice of assessment from the previous the previous tax year.
Okay, perfect. What if someone wanted to hire a grant writer? Are those fees claimable on the application?
No, but well, kind of. So most of our grants have a 15% admin fee. It's been relaxed due to the pandemic that if you have in-house expenses, meaning you're paying yourself, let's say you're doing a sound recording grant and you're paying yourself a hired musician fee, those are in-house expenses. Before the pandemic, if you had in-house expenses, you couldn't include a 15% admin fee on the grant, but we've waived that. So we don't need to worry about that. So yes, 15% up to $5,000. But that would be included in the max. So if you are doing I'm just going to make up some numbers here in my head. Let's say you're doing a world tour, world tour, and it's going to cost you a whole lot of money. Well, the max Creative Saskatchewan will come in at is $15,000. Your 15% admin fee needs to be included in that $15,000. Okay, does that make sense? Yep. So now that admin fee that goes straight into your pocket, and that is to compensate you for your time administering the grant and the reporting. If it's, like if you're doing like a $50,000 market and export development grant, that's a $5,000 admin fee, like, that's not too bad. Now, if you hire a grant writer, that is totally fine. But you would either pay them out of pocket or with that admin fee. However you do that is it's up to you, but you would not include an invoice from them, or like that's up to you.
Okay, great. I have a question here. I saw something about grants going back 3 years. Are you able to explain this?
I'm not quite sure what.
Okay, if that person who asked that question wants to give more context or maybe expand in the chat box, feel free. While I wait for that, I'll jump to the next question here. Can you maybe just expand a bit on what commercial viability, commercial release, commercial intent entails? I know it's not a one answer fits all, but I know that's very important to Creative Saskatchewan funding. So what exactly is commercial viability?
Yeah, I mean, it would be really the opportunity or the intent to make money. There are a lot of funding agencies in the country that focus on the contribution to the cultural landscape, making art for the betterment and the enrichment of people's lives, which is all wonderful. But if there's not the opportunity for you to make money, then it's not necessarily a good fit with Creative Saskatchewan. It doesn't mean that necessarily your project is going to make gobs of money. You maybe even end up in the red, but it is for sale. Like, you are making an album that you're not giving away. You're making it to sell, and of course digitally. Like, I mean, as long as the intention is there, that's really what commercial viability is all about.
Perfect. Awesome. Next question here. What is the jury process like? How many people review an application? Is there a sample scorecard available?
No, but the assessment criteria, because it has the breakdown of scores, that's kind of like what the scorecard would be. On our website in the annual report, we list all the jurors for that particular year. It's we don't disclose, what programs they juried, but those names are all there. So I encourage folks to go through and look through. We don't disclose, share information as to how many jurors there are in each panel. They vary grant to grant. But as you would see by the jury list, like they're, very, they're fantastic music industry experts from all over the country and even out of the country. And, we're lucky that we get really fantastic jurors that spend so much of their time and energy reviewing these applications. After an application is assessed, and well, I guess I should kind of back up and say, so after there's a deadline, all eligible applications would then be sent to the jury. They have a period of time with those applications to review them all and submit their applications. And then there's a process, to finalize everything. And they make their recommendations. And then based on the amount of funding available, we award the grants that are recommended for funding, from the highest ranking to the lowest. Sometimes funding is exhausted, sometimes there's enough to go around. We always hope for the latter. Anyone who applies gets a copy of their scores, successful or not. You get a copy of your scores and you receive consensus feedback from the jury about what they feel you could do with future applications to make improvements or things that they really loved. But the scores, I think, really helps people kind of see, okay, these are the areas that maybe could use some improvement. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's the jury process. I hope it helps a bit and puts things into perspective.
Yeah, for sure. And I know we're approaching our cutoff time here, so this is a perfect question to kind of wrap it up with. What support is there for people who need help writing these grants? Maybe I'm not super a good writer. I feel like I don't have those skills to convey my project. Not necessarily hiring a full-on grant writer, but maybe just a little extra support.
For sure. Well, we really encourage people to reach out to us if they have questions, even if they think that they're silly. We can't offer advice or direction, but we're here to guide you and provide clarity wherever possible. And of course, we encourage folks to get in touch with SAS Music because you guys are so great with providing that, that support, that second set of eyes, career development, like, hey, maybe look at this, maybe think of that. But I do hope that people don't think of this as a really intimidating, overwhelming process. I I understand, I do, like it can seem that way. But I would say, most people write their own grants. Most people, like regardless of your career level, first time applicants have received funding. It's not a guaranteed thing. And I think once you get your profile set up, once you kind of get your groove on and have submitted applications, then it becomes easier. And I've heard from so many people, regardless if they get the grant or not, it's like, oh my goodness, it was so nice to have such a strong plan, to know what it was going to cost and, who was going to be involved and when it was going to happen. Those are good things for a musician to have, regardless if they're getting funding or not. But yeah, I think just sometimes you just got to dive in, ask questions for sure. And it's, I don't know, maybe I'm a bit biased, but maybe it's not as bad as you think.
I agree. And yep, to kind of second what Lisa said and what I mentioned before, we're here to help. We do a lot of grant reviews. We can help with marketing plans, and that alone, your marketing plan is such a good tool to have as an artist that you can reference back whether or not you're successful with funding. So I've plunked a couple links in there. We work with a lot of Saskatchewan artists who have been successful in securing Creative Saskatchewan funding, and you can book a grant review with someone who's done it, someone who's filled out that application themselves, and they can point out holes and things you're missing or maybe haven't thought of. So call Creative Saskatchewan, call SAS Music, check out our mentor list, and yeah, you do have folks helping you to do it. So don't feel like you're doing it alone. You got a ton of support. And with that, I think we're kind of at the end here. So thank you so much to everyone for attending. Thank you to Lisa and Megan for organizing this and getting us to partner on these events. We always like these updates and sharing the new information and new deadline with you folks. So I guess with that, we'll end it.
Thank you so much, Brittany. Thank you, everyone. I look forward to hearing from you all in the future.